Is everybody ready? This is the 2-minute warning.
Yes, the only commissioner that I haven't seen yet is Commissioner Bob, but I will keep checking for him to log on.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
Good afternoon, Chair Hart. Yes, we do have a quorum today. Participating in the meeting is yourself as Chair, Vice Chair Lobby, Secretary and Treasurer Farrar Dyke, and the Commissioners Rouse, Higgins, and DeBrule. And Commissioner Higgins will be a voting member today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we will turn to our safety message from Operations Program Specialist Daryl Braxton. Mr. Braxton?
Thank you, Chair Hart. The National Safety Council designates June as National Safety Month. Clear communication and focus is key to safety. Whether it is from managers to frontline workers, among colleagues or at home, making sure information is freely shared and that you ask questions if you do not understand the information that is shared. At a job safety briefing, for example, it is important not to just go through the motions, but to pay attention and understand the instructions. When you're doing something, avoid 3 key types of distraction: visual, manual, and cognitive. Keep your eyes on what you're doing. Keep your hands on the tools, railings, or other places they need to be for safety. Keep your mind focused and on your task. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. We will now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of the May 14th, 2024 meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the May 14th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lobby has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Thank you. The vote is 5 yeas to no nays. The motion to approve the minutes as presented passes.
And just being sure, Ms. Silbaugh, that you see Commissioner Bob has joined us.
Thank you. I did not.
Thank you for that, Dr. Meyer. Next item on the agenda is public comments. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated they would like to speak today?
Yes, Chair Hart. Mr. Will Jackson, you're unmuted. You have 2 minutes.
Part and the commission, and I apologize, it's a little echoey in here. I'm in a library room. But so I did not script this. I'm a little concerned I'm getting into something I shouldn't. So Chair Hart, please shut me off. You're aware of this past issue. So I wanted to raise a technical point about the 2004 Dear Valued Customer letter from the Fort Totten investigation. And I'm a little concerned that WMATA kind of keeps getting yelled at. Kind of, with the issue about, the accusations that they were mixing impedance bonds and things like that. And I think kind of with the tone of things compared to the tone of WMSC staff, I think WMSC staff has worked very hard to really work to solve the problem. And when you compare some of the findings of, Mr. Pion and his team versus some of the things that, some of the NTSB members have said, I'm concerned that it's created safety events. And I have specifics from the docket. I'm running out of time, but it's a little confusing to me. So I wanted to note this for the docket. You have very limited time in 2 minutes, but you can read through the docket and there's very specific things where WMATA, I think, is working hard on some things. So I wanted to note this. I'm concerned about this. And I think it's kind of this whole tone of things with the on the floor investigators versus other folks is kind of, I don't know. I'm a little concerned about this when you understand the technicals of it. So thank you guys. And thank you as always for your work.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jackson. We'll be sure to take that into account in addressing future issues of that type. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to ensure that Metro Rail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I appreciate the ongoing communication and coordination that the WMSC staff conducts with Metro Rail at all levels of both organizations. This includes the ongoing work related to Metro Rail's train operator certification, audits and corrective action plans, safety certification, and inspections. Later this meeting, we will consider the WMSC's annual reports, which demonstrate the importance and effectiveness of our safety oversight for the region in 2023. We will also consider the annual revision to our program standard. These updates are part of our continuous improvement process for the WMSC operations and for safety oversight. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks to add?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Yes, sir, I do. Maybe I should make sure my audio is working.
5 by 5.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chair Hart. I do have updates on several areas of our ongoing oversight work. First, I wanted to say that Metro Rail is making progress under our order to address its non-compliance with its train operator certification requirements. Metro Rail provided its latest update yesterday, and it continues the work required by our order to properly certify as train operators those active personnel who currently require this certification. This is following the comprehensive records review that was required by our order. Because of that review, Metro Rail identified an even larger number of personnel who were designated as certified, despite not meeting the safety requirements set out by Metro Rail. Due to the larger than expected number of personnel Metro Rail requested and the WMSC granted an extension of time to comply with the order. Metro Rail now has until July 31st to properly complete all train operator certifications. We are reviewing additional data in Metro Rail's update provided yesterday. Metro Rail is also working on revisions to its certification process as part of the corrective action plans that our order required them to develop. We appreciate Metro Rail's cooperation and progress as it addresses the safety issue. We're continuing preparations for our fitness for duty and occupational health audit. Metro Rail did not provide the required documents that we subpoenaed by the extended deadline of May 31st. Last week, we responded to Metro Rail reminding Metro Rail of our authority and obligation to do this safety oversight work, and of Metro Rail's duty to comply with our oversight and to provide for the safety of the people working across the rail system's stations, tracks, and facilities. Our safety oversight of these areas has driven Metro Rail to make a number of important safety improvements during the last 5 years. These improvements have included addressing unsafe practices, creating and improving procedures, and making physical repairs and upgrades. Metro Rail has agreed to the request in our letter for a meeting, and legal counsel for both organizations will meet in person tomorrow. I'm hopeful that Metro Rail will meet its obligations under the WMSC Compact and federal regulations. If Metro Rail does not, we'll take necessary further steps to ensure they comply with the subpoena, our safety oversight, and Metro's safety commitments to provide for the safety of riders, workers, and first responders. Since the last public meeting, we issued the final report for the revenue vehicles or rail car audit. Metro Rail's proposed corrective action plans are due by June 20th for that audit. Contrary to its safety requirements, on April 18th, Metro Rail's quality program sent an unattributed email informing the WMSC that Metro Rail would be delaying upcoming deliverables associated with 8 worker safety related caps and would not submit a revised cap that was under development in response to a finding in the train control and signals audit. We responded to Metro Rail informing them that this was not aligned with safety requirements. Last week, Metro Rail submitted documents the WMSC requested for 1 cap that's on the April 18th list. The WMSC is reviewing the submission. The deliverables for the remaining 7 caps began in July. We are hopeful that Metro Rail will submit all deliverables when due and restart communication on formulating the ATC audit-related cap. The WMSC will take action if necessary to ensure this important safety work progresses. Mr. Paul Smith will provide further updates later in this meeting related to our oversight work of Metro Rail's safety certification process. I appreciate our team's work to observe the pilot automatic train operation training activities for train operators and rail traffic controllers that Metro Rail conducted last month. The WMSC provided feedback and reflected concerns and areas for improvement raised to management by Metro Rail's frontline personnel. As you mentioned, Chair Hart, there are several important action items on the agenda today. The first is the annual revision to the WMSC program standard. Very few changes were required this year. We carefully considered each of Metro Rail's comments on the program standard, and we incorporated several of those into the revised draft that will be before you later in today's meeting. Second, our narrative annual reports will be also presented for your consideration today. This is required by the WMSC Compact, and these reports provide a high-level overview of Metro Rail safety and the WMSC's operations in calendar year 2023. I'm proud of our team's work overseeing Metro Rail safety compliance with its safety requirements, continually leading to safety improvements for workers, riders, and others. Finally, to provide an update on the FTA's regular audit of our safety oversight program, the FTA held an exit conference with us late last month, and we look forward to receiving the FTA's draft report for our review in the coming weeks. Thank you, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lowry.
Dr. Meyer, on the FTA exit conference, did they give any hints of any issues or or, the status of their audit?
They, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe they set, answering the status question first, they set like a 60-day time frame for themselves to provide us a draft report. And when we get the draft report, we'll know with certainty what findings that they are actually planning to put in the report. Every audit ends with findings, so I'm sure there will be some. The findings, or they call them areas of concern at this stage, that they discussed revolved around procedural issues as well as the completeness of our triennial audit cycle. But they stressed to us that those may not actually remain as findings in the final report. So I think at this stage, I'm certain there will be findings, and I'm certain we'll be asked to develop corrective action plans to rectify them. But at this stage, I really don't know what those findings might be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Laube. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I have one quick question. For Dr.
Yes,
Meyer.
please, Commissioner Rouse.
On the operations side for the train operator certification, is there a periodicity in which they have to be recertified? Is there a 3-year or limit to how long they can go before they have to go back through training and get recertified?
The answer is yes, and I'll look to Ms. Samara Sinha to actually maybe speak to that.
There, and Commissioner Rouse, there are two different forms of ensuring that they're current on their understanding and knowledge. In every 2 years, people who need to maintain their train operator certification status are required to undergo a certification of train operator knowledge and skills. In the years that are in between those 2 years, there is a refresher training required, which have other attributes in terms of ensuring that they maintain the proficiency and conversancy of skill sets that are required for train operators. So it's a combination. Every 2 years, there is a certification, and in between, there is a refresher training that they're required to undergo and complete.
Okay, thanks for that. How does something like ATO and by a lesser extent, probably automatic door operations, I like the fact that we're sitting down looking at pilot training and looking at concerns or any issues or deficiencies now rather than when they try to roll out something like that. But how does that then factor into expectations for train operators? Would that be an addendum of just a subset? Does that fit into their 2-year recertification process? Has there been any discussion on how that will play out going from a pilot program to actually executing that when they want to go and start talking about rolling out ATO?
Absolutely, and as for other undertakings, it is a part of the overall safety certification process that Metrorail undertakes. And in this case, they are developing some specialized training to reflect the operational environment under which ATO will be rolled out. And they're working to have a program that will put everyone, both train operators and rail traffic controllers and others who need the training through it, and ensure that they receive the training and the certification that they need before they would safety certify ATO, and of course before we would concur on that.
Okay, but at this point, no discussion on how that would be rolled out, whether they would roll that out once the pilot and training is agreed upon to just start getting operators familiar with it, or do it on a line-by-line basis or anything of that nature.
Ms. Samara Sinha, do you want to comment on that?
Sure, and thank you, Dr. Meyer and Commissioner Rouse. So as Dr. Meyer pointed out, there were several activities that took place towards the latter part of May that pertains to evaluating the pilot training that Metrorail has designed for their train operators and control center controllers. And one of the inputs was us observing these activities and providing insights on areas where we considered Metro needs to provide additional attention or develop additional activities. One of our pieces of advice and feedback to Metro was to ensure that once this training is fully developed and at a steady state, to look at integrating important aspects of the training in its entirety into the train operator training activities that precede a student trainee becoming or being certified as a train operator. So our feedback was once this ATO training has reached a steady state, to look at integrating that into the train operator training and certification activities.
Okay, thanks. Just curious. I know, the certification is a big issue here, and that's another one where, okay, now we're adding another layer of complexity in terms of what they need to be qualified to do to function, especially in ATO. So we're going to have another question as we get close to that era is who's qualified to be out there in the first place and what do the records look like? So I'm just trying to prep us now to be thinking about some of these things, and I know you are. So thank you for that.
Well, and actually, that was one of the advantages of Metro Rail's leadership's decision to split out the automatic door operation safety certification and process from the full-scale ATO project, because it allowed everyone involved, to include us, to go through that process and see how it was best to train, particularly train operators in that case, on their responsibilities with that automation system. So in a sense, it was a dress rehearsal for this larger and more extensive project.
Thank you, Chair. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Dr. Meyer? And thank you, Ms. Samar Singha, for helping with the answers. Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Mr. John O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell?
Okay, thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC is currently conducting our second triennial cycle of audits of Metro Rail's compliance with its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and associated commitments and requirements. Last month, as Dr. Meyer mentioned, we issued the final report for our revenue vehicles or railcar audit. We are in the initial stages of our emergency management and fire life safety programs audit. This audit will include items such as emergency preparedness and response, egress, tunnel lighting, and the like. The initial notification and document request was sent to Metro Rail on June 3rd. We expect interviews and on-site activities to occur in the late summer time period. Regarding our fitness for duty and occupational health programs audit, as Dr. Meyer detailed earlier, the WMSC issued a subpoena last month for the audit materials that Metro Rail has not yet provided. Metro Rail submitted written objections to the subpoena on May 6th and provided some additional documents soon after. Metro Rail confirmed on May 31st, the last date for producing the documents, that it had produced all the documents that it intended in response to the subpoena. This did not meet the requirements of the subpoena. As Dr. Meyer stated, the WMSC responded to Metro Rail last week, reiterating Metro Rail's requirements under the WMSC Compact and other laws and regulations to comply with continuous safety improvement processes. Council will be meeting this week. Metro Rail employees should work in a safe environment. Passengers and others who interact with the rail system, such as first responders, should also be in a safe environment. The WMSC audit team is ready to conduct the fitness for duty and occupational health programs audit, which will assess Metro Rail's requirements and compliance with safety rules once we have adequate information and the materials to do so. For our roadway worker protection audit, the draft report has now been transmitted to Metro Rail for its 30-day review. If Metro Rail provides any comments or additional information, the WMSC will carefully review each of those and take it into consideration for our final report. This is the first public meeting since the final report of the revenue vehicles audit, so I will provide details of that audit's work and the findings thereof. The audit covered rail cars designed to carry passengers. As with each audit, we assess Metro Rail's practices, procedures, and associated training and implementation of these safety processes. In the development and execution of each audit, we look back and consider prior findings and corrective action plans related to that given subject area. Each audit involves that extensive preparation, document and data reviews, interviews, and observation of relevant Metro Rail activities. During this audit, the WMSC scheduled and conducted 33 formal interviews. This included personnel from the Office of the Chief Mechanical Officer, car maintenance, rail car engineering, and rail car quality assurance and warranty. We also spoke to additional frontline employees and managers during our observations across WMATA's rail system. The on-site work for this audit included observations in 6 different rail yards, at Metrorail's control center, and in stations and in trains in passenger service. We debrief during each and every visit with Metrorail personnel. In each audit, we observe and document positive practices at Metrorail. For this audit, this included Metrorail's development and implementation under the WMSC's oversight of improved measurement tools and practices to detect wheel sets that do not meet Metrorail safety requirements. Also, due to the WMSC's oversight, Metrorail is now utilizing vehicle track interaction system data. This safety data that Metrorail had not previously acted upon is now leading to more timely track and vehicle repairs that prevent further damage. This audit did identify 7 findings and 3 different recommendations. Our interviews, data reviews, and observations in railcar shops and facilities demonstrate that Metrorail is not carrying out railcar maintenance and inspection tasks as specified by its procedures. Specifically, the WMSC observed mechanics working alone conducting back-to-back measurements on wheel sets, a task that Metrorail procedure confirms can only be done accurately with 2 personnel. We observed mechanics not completing daily inspections as required by Metrorail procedure. These inspections are designed to ensure that railcars are safe and functional for use in passenger service. We observed Metrorail personnel conducting work without proper protections by conducting inspections before placing blue flags and lights at the end of the train as required. We observed Metrorail personnel utilizing outdated procedures. We identified that Metrorail was placing cars into service without safety protections of properly sealed switches in the operating cab. We reviewed records of supervisory checks that were not completed. We reviewed records that showed Metrorail is not following its processes for operational restrictions necessary to ensure, for example, a rail car with a damaged radio is not used for the lead position, as that would impede required communication between the train operator and control center. To address this finding, Metrorail must develop a corrective action plan to ensure that maintenance is done in accordance with its procedures and that cars are only released and put into service if they meet Metrorail's requirements. Metrorail must also implement improvements to ensure safety processes such as blue flag protection and wheel chocks are constantly and properly implemented. The second finding of this audit is that Metrorail is training railcar personnel on outdated procedures. For each audit, we request Metrorail's training curricula and associated documents. Our review of these materials for this audit demonstrated that Metrorail is using outdated and incorrect training material. This included training using multiple different versions of daily inspection procedures, each of which being outdated. These outdated procedures have differing information and do not include the current safety warnings. Training documents included outdated procedures dating back more than a decade, despite multiple procedural changes in that time, and despite Metrorail's documented requirements to regularly review and update these materials. This creates risk for the personnel that they will not carry out current maintenance and safety requirements. A procedure which sets the requirements for keeping documents up to date was also not current. Metrorail's proposed corrective action plan must implement an effective process to review and update training materials on a regular basis and ensure that procedural updates are incorporated into the relevant training material. This audit, finding number 3, this audit found that Metrorail is not meeting life safety and occupational safety health requirements in its railcar maintenance facilities. The WMSC audit team observed Metrorail personnel not following safe lifting requirements, including the required protective equipment during crane movement. We also observed metal grinders in railcar shops that had combustible materials near them and an outdated Hotworks permit posted. Metrorail's Hotworks manual also requires compliance with Metrorail's respiratory protection program. However, Metrorail stated it did not have such a respiratory protection program. Metrorail subsequently provided its first respiratory protection program in February. This is a fundamental worker safety program. Metrorail records also did not show all applicable car maintenance personnel are trained on Hotworks as required by its procedures. The WMSC also observed deficiencies related to fall protection in the Metro Rail shops, signage not complying with National Fire Protection Association requirements, and Metro Rail's compressed gas and refrigerant recovery process. Metro Rail did not have a procedure for handling the refrigerant and has not trained personnel as specified in its compressed gas cylinder storage, use, and handling program manual. These are examples of worker safety hazards that are requiring Metro Rail to address as part of our regular oversight work, as we have for the last 5 years. We look forward to Metro Rail's proposed corrective action plan to assure that it's meeting its life safety and occupational safety and health requirements in its rail car maintenance facilities. The fourth finding is that Metro Rail is not identifying and mitigating hazards related to rail cars and rail car personnel. Metro Rail safety plans have long required Metro Rail to identify, track, and mitigate hazards to improve safety. However, Metro Rail stated that they did not maintain a hazard log related to rail cars. The WMSC observed unmitigated hazards related to electrical safety in shops, unsecured re-railing equipment in a trailer, non-functional equipment available in storage areas, and shop inspections not capturing known hazards. We also observed that Metro Rail's process for taking trains out of service creates the opportunity for a train with a known hazard to be returned to service. This is due to the time lag in opening of a work order. Metro Rail's proposed corrective action plan must ensure that Metro Rail is identifying, prioritizing, and effectively mitigating hazards related to rail cars and rail car personnel as specified by its agency safety plan. The fifth finding is that Metro Rail is not following its operational certification requirements for car maintenance road mechanics. Road mechanics are the individuals who assigned to respond when something goes wrong with a train on the mainline tracks, to troubleshoot the issue, and sometimes to move this disabled train. Records reviewed and interviews demonstrate that Metro Rail is designating these mechanics as certified to operate trains, despite these road mechanics not attempting or completing all required tasks. As you know and mentioned, in February, we issued an order requiring Metro Rail to address its non-compliance with its train operator certification requirements. In this case, in addition to the train operator certification process, the corrective action plan must ensure that car maintenance only assigns personnel to roles that they are qualified for. The sixth finding is that Metro Rail is not following industry standard electrostatic discharge, or ESD, practices for rail car components. Without this protection, electronic systems such as printed circuit boards that are part of Metro Rail's cars can deteriorate more quickly. A few task-specific Metro Rail procedures reference this protection, but we observed personnel handling boards with no wrist straps or similar protection, and saw that boards were not kept in the protective bags. Metro Rail must establish and implement electrostatic discharge procedures for rail car maintenance tasks. Metro Rail is beginning this safety improvement process currently. The final finding is that Metro Rail is using equipment that is not calibrated in accordance with its policies and procedures, including for inspection and maintenance of components with a direct impact on safety. Our team walked into a shop and saw personnel using a power supply about a year out of calibration to test electrical contactors. Metro Rail's list of calibrated equipment showed other items past due for calibration, and for equipment requiring calibration, using equipment past the calibration date introduces the risk that is not providing the required safety benefit. Metro Rail's proposed corrective action plan must include capturing required equipment and supervisory checks to ensure that only properly calibrated equipment is in use. For each finding, Metro Rail's corrective action plan proposals are due to us later this month. As I mentioned, the audit also includes 3 recommendations. The first recommendation is that Metro Rail is not tracking the shelf life of railcar parts that decay over time and therefore have a limited shelf life. This relates to parts like rubber gaskets. We did not directly observe the use of expired parts, but Metro Rail has an opportunity to mitigate that risk. The second recommendation is that Metro Rail could improve the effectiveness of its maintenance tasks by proactively providing training records to supervisors of employees newly assigned to their shift or location. Metro Rail confirmed that supervisors may not get information for weeks about personnel newly assigned to their location, and that supervisors must actively request that information. This introduces risk each time there is a job pick with new assignments that supervisors may assign personnel to tasks that are not trained or qualified to perform. The third recommendation is that Metro Rail should update its railcar maintenance staffing assessment to account for its current facilities, railcars, maintenance requirements, and other operational changes. Metro Rail did not have a current assessment and had not conducted such an assessment in the last 5 years. During that time, Metro Rail has made significant changes to operations, facilities, safety requirements, and its railcar fleet. When Metro Rail provides its proposed corrective action plans later this month, the WMSC team will carefully review each plan. For plans that are complete, including appropriate timelines, the WMSC can approve those caps for implementation. Typically, though, the WMSC provides feedback on proposed caps that Metro Rail then incorporates. This process, specified in the program standard, continues until a cap is approved. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell?
I've got a few, Chair. I was going to let somebody else ask because I know.
Yes, please, Commissioner Rouse.
Just on a couple of the issues, the incorrect procedures, was that something that you saw system-wide, or was there any specific rhyme or reason? Was it certain shops were out of date, but other shops were into date, or was it just all over the place? Was there any patterns that were noted there?
No, there's not a particular pattern. Some of the training material, obviously, that is all kind of a centralized material that goes out to all the different shops, and that certainly needs to be looked at. But what's being used in the field, there was no pattern or rhyme or reason on why one area was using one version versus another. That's something that absolutely needs to be looked at.
Okay, thank you. And as it relates to uncalibrated equipment, is that managed centrally within each shop from inventory control, or was that also just pick it up and use it?
It's managed within each shop. Each shop manages their own equipment on calibration and has kind of a calibration custodian who's in charge of that. A lot of the records we saw were good, but certainly there is room for improvement, as we saw equipment in use that wasn't calibrated. Also, dozens of pieces of equipment on the list out of calibration. No indication what was happening with those pieces of equipment. So definitely needs to be looked at.
Okay, but none of it was controlled from for certain tools you'd have to check out and get from an inventory control. And then
correct. Yes.
They're
yes.
just
It's right. Correct. Yes.
Okay. And the units that were identified as not suitable to go back out in the main line, is there any way of indicating that, or is it just written in the report and hope that someone saw it before they lined it up on a train?
I'd ask one of my maybe one of the.
I don't need an answer now. I'm just curious. Sure. I mean, that seems like one of those.
We can certainly get that information to you. I would note that Commissioner Furdyke also has her hand up.
Yeah, that'd be something to get more information on, because that's one of those low-hanging fruit that could be an easy fix if there's some way to immediately identify it, rather than it getting buried in a report and hoping somebody doesn't just send it back out to operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Hi, my comment is at the end of your report and your recommendations. I would just recommend that you change recommendation number 1. You made a comment or a statement, but it's not really a recommendation. So you want to give them your recommendations, and it didn't say what you wanted it to do. You made a comment at what it was not doing, but to change it to make it a recommendation. If you look at the verbiage, that's all.
Okay. We could certainly do that.
Chair Hart, you were muted.
I'm sorry. Vice Chair Lobby also has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead. Who was first? I can't see everyone, so I'm not sure who was first.
I think Lobby is next.
Okay, Commissioner Lowby.
Thank you. Just a short question. this equipment calibration is an important issue. And maybe you can't answer this question, Mr. O'Donnell, but I would assume if there's calibration issues with equipment that's in a shop, that there's also calibrations for issues with equipment that's used around the system, whether to check signal systems or automatic train operation systems or other things. Do you have any idea if this calibration issue goes beyond just the realm of the rolling stock?
No, well, that's something that, certainly we would hope that they would look at, based on this finding. But, our finding and focus here was specific to, the rail cars and the shop issues that we were seeing, focus on this audit scope.
Okay, fair enough. What I'm used to is some organization within a railroad being responsible for all the calibration of all the equipment and having processes to keep to make sure that those dates are adhered to. And apparently this is not the case at Metro Rail. Are they
That's
all?
correct.
Okay, so they're all individually managing their own programs depending
That's
on what
correct.
shop they're at. Okay.
Mhm. That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Individual department, yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any further questions for Commissioner O'Donnell? For Mr. O'Donnell.
He got promoted today. I don't see any other hands raised.
That's not a promotion.
Ms. Silball, you said no other hands raised?
Correct. No other
Okay,
hands.
thank you. Okay, in that case, we will now take up the next agenda item, corrective action plans. Mr. O'Donnell, yours again.
Thank you again, Chair Hart. Since the last public meeting, we have closed 2 corrective action plans. Metro Rail currently has 94 open caps and other caps in development. Caps in development include those that we just talked about related to the revenue vehicles audit. Metro Rail has made progress on its corrective action plan development as required by our January 17th order to address NTSB safety recommendation R-2328. Last month, the WMSC approved the last of the 4 caps Metro Rail proposed to address the requirements of our order. These corrective action plans provide the specific steps Metro Rail will take and the timelines for completing these steps to begin identifying safety critical items and then to develop and implement trend analysis processes to monitor these safety critical items. Moving to the train operator certification order caps, Metro Rail provided revised corrective action plan proposals on May 22nd to address the 2 findings in our order issued in February. The WMSC approved the 2 related caps on June 5th. Each cap includes discrete deliverables, the steps necessary to address the identified safety issue, and the specific deadline when each step will be completed. Each deliverable encompasses specific actions or verification showing progress in improving safety. The WMSC conducts reviews of Metro Rail submissions on an ongoing basis related to all currently open caps. Since the last public meeting, Metro Rail has submitted 16 discrete new deliverables for WMSC review in Metro Rail's regular weekly submissions. As I mentioned, the WMSC has closed 2 caps since the last public meeting. The first of those caps is C0118, which addressed the WMSC's August 2021 order and finding that Metro Rail is not consistently following its safety certification process, which led to project activation and use without proper hazard identification and mitigation, putting Metro Rail customers, personnel, and first responders at risk. As part of this corrective action plan, Metro Rail has improved its safety certification process and conducted a gap analysis to identify projects that were not properly assessed for hazards. This led to identifying and mitigating hazards related to those projects. Metro Rail has updated its program documents and processes, including its safety and security certification program plan, the project evaluation criteria, and the project implementation and development manuals. Metro Rail has trained project management personnel on its requirements. The second cap closed is C0195, which addressed a recommendation from the 2021 rail operations audit. The audit showed that Metro Rail operations departments do not have effective processes to consider and act upon safety input from employees at all levels of the organization. This CAP was closely aligned with other CAPs regarding the implementation of Metro Rail's safety management system processes within the rail operations department. As part of this corrective action plan, Metro Rail implemented incident investigation manager roles to help manage risk identification and mitigation processes. Their duties include developing and implementing plans to remove barriers to reporting hazards and safety issues. Even after a CAP is closed, the WMSC continues to monitor Metro Rail's actions on an ongoing basis through our audits, inspections, and other oversight activities. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. I'm not sure how complete that was. I had some interruption on your audio. Did others have interruption on the audio?
No, Chair Hart.
No, Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go forth then. Okay. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell?
I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Seeing none, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail's safety certification process. Paul Smith, WMSC Director, Systems Engineering, will present this item. Mr. Smith, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Metro Rail's safety certification process is a critical element of Metro Rail's safety management system. Identifying and understanding failure modes, or hazards, and proactively mitigating the likelihood and severity of those hazards in a systematic way as documented in Metro Rail's policy and procedures provides for the overall safety of the Metro Rail system. Metro Rail implements its safety certification program, and we oversee Metro Rail's work through field observations, document and data review, and regular meetings with Metro Rail, as well as by observing the discussions among Metro Rail safety certification committees and working groups. Metro Rail is required to carry out this work for each of its projects that meet its criteria for safety certification. In accordance with our program standard, we designate specific projects for the WMSC's in-depth review of Metro Rail safety certification activities. For these projects, Metro Rail may not activate the asset or systems into service until the WMSC concurs that Metro Rail has conducted its safety certification process, including hazard identification and any mitigations or corrective actions. The WMSC selected Metro Rail's consideration of significantly increasing its operating speeds for in-depth review, and we continue to monitor the progress of the safety certification of this project. We communicated with WMATA the need to ensure this project meets its program requirements. This includes conducting the necessary engineering evaluations based on actual data and documentation regarding Metro Rail's consideration of significantly increasing the safe operating speed that has been in place for about 40 years. This includes the requirement for Metro Rail to understand how any change to operating speed affects the signal system's block design, in addition to assessing the safe braking distances of each type of rail car in the current rail fleet. These are safety concerns that have been highlighted by past safety events such as the 1996 Shady Grove collision. Regarding Metro Rail's work on automatic train operation and automatic door operation, the WMSC staff observed pilot ATO training activities, tabletop exercises, and train demonstration runs to review the efficacy of the pilot training for 4 rail vehicle operators and 4 rail traffic controllers. We provided WMATA with our comments regarding these activities and are awaiting their responses. The WMSC team continues to conduct field observations and to monitor Metro Rail safety certification working groups, documentation, and other activities. We have been overseeing Metro Rail's work related to automatic train operation and automatic door operation for several years. Metro Rail is continuing to work on the automatic train operation concept of operations. We have provided feedback each time it has been requested by Metro Rail. Our extensive oversight work and open, consistent, iterative communication provides Metro Rail with the greatest opportunity to address any identified issues early in the process. Automatic door operation is separate from automatic train operation, and Metrorail safety certification work on automatic door operation is specific to that system. It does not include ATO. Metrorail is conducting automatic door operation train operator certification system-wide, and Metrorail communicated this week that they have trained 95% of their train operators on automatic door operations, and we are awaiting the documentation of this training. We look forward to Metrorail's continued progress, and we continue to work on other safety certification oversight. These observations include Metrorail's 7000 series wheel set replacement program and monitoring of Metrorail's ongoing work on the automated wayside inspection system, or AWIS, and Metrorail's work on future 8000 series rail cars. Regarding the 7000 series wheel sets, Metrorail is now inspecting those 7000 series rail cars that have the new wheel sets that better align with industry standards for cars of this size and weight on a 60-day cycle aligned with its periodic inspection cycle. Rail cars that have not had new wheel sets installed continue to be inspected every 30 days to ensure that those wheel sets experiencing wheel migration are removed from service. Related to automated wayside inspection systems, Metrorail has begun construction on the remaining 2 sites that it has planned. 6 others are installed currently. Validation of the systems and development and implementation of associated procedures to ensure Metrorail acts on this safety data are part of the safety certification process. Regarding the 8000 series rail cars, Metrorail is progressing designs. The Hitachi facility in Hagerstown, where the cars will be assembled, is also progressing. Thank you, Chair Hart. This completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Smith?
Yes, Commissioner Rouse has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Rouse.
I'd have a question, right? As it relates to the operating speeds, is curving speed also being looked at there? Because I think that, yeah, obviously you can run tangent track is one thing, but for a system like WMATA in particular, a lot of the constraints for operating speed really come down to curving speed and the amount of curves that you have and your super elevation, things like that. And also your ATC system, which may have limits to what it can do. You may be able to go 55 if you only have a code that's 35 and 60. Well, you're stuck with 35. So is that also being examined as part of this effort?
Yeah, yes, Commissioner Rouse, that is being looked at from the track and structure side on the super elevations on the curves to make sure that it comports with the proper elevation for those curves, for those speeds, the increasing of those speeds, as well as the ATC system is being investigated as far as the codes, the speed codes that it can generate in those locations. Those are all being taken into account.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. Any other questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith, I have a question, and that is the concept of automatic train operation. Does that concept envision having no operator on the train, or would there still be an operator in front?
No, at this time, there still would be an operator on board. Even in ATO operations, once they go back to that, there's the plan is still to have the operator on board the train.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from any of the other commissioners?
I see no other hands raised.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. Seeing none, we'll move on to safety event investigations. Mr. Quigley, I understand you have updates on ongoing investigations and reports to present for our consideration today. We will hear presentations on all the remaining reports and then consider a single motion on all the reports. But having said that, I'm going to ask the speakers to pause after each report so we're not waiting until the end for questions. We'll have questions on each report after each report. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that will be voted on, considered as a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation of the report. Mr. Quigley, would you begin the investigation reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. We continue to work with Metrorail's investigation team on investigations and associated corrective actions. We are proud of our effective collaboration and communication that has led to significant improvements in safety event investigation reports over the last 5 years. We are involved in multiple investigative interviews and other activities each week. For example, we are investigating Metrorail's response during an evacuation for life safety reasons of Foggy Bottom Station on May 18th. After the fire department responded, Metro Rail began to restore third rail power without confirming that the firefighters were clear of the roadway. Due to redundancies in the process that Metro Rail developed due to the WMSC findings and orders, a power desk assistant superintendent was able to stop the restoration of power. The investigation has identified concerns related to Metro Rail's acceptance of noncompliance with elements of its safety procedure in the control center, including elements that require confirmation with fire department personnel that they are safely cleared. We plan to review additional documentation and data related to this and other events involving fire department response. We're also investigating an improper roadway worker protection event on April 27th that was only identified due to the WMSC's oversight. The WMSC arrived at Benning Road Station to observe the setup of protection for a full-scale emergency exercise being held within a larger weekend shutdown. The WMSC observed that the Metro Rail employee leading the group setting up the work area began this work despite not being briefed by the roadway worker in charge or mobile command. The WMSC also observed that the specific roadway job safety briefing that should have been held by this track and structures employee in charge before the work area was established was not conducted. These are requirements of Metro Rail safety rules designed to mitigate the risk of injury or death. The WMSC raised these safety concerns to Metro Rail personnel, gathered additional documentation, and has participated in investigative interviews. Metro Rail has now acknowledged this improper roadway worker protection. We will progress this investigation into a final report for your consideration. Due to other investigations, such as Whiskey 0276 adopted at the last meeting, we are encouraging Metro Rail to improve an engineering control in its rail cars to reduce the risk of improper train movements and red signal overruns. The WMSC has asked Metro Rail about the opportunity to incorporate these improvements into the 8000 series rail cars to ensure that stop and proceed mode resets when the doors are opened or when the train is keyed down.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt momentarily. Excuse me, Mr. Quigley, but I wanted to give the commissioners a chance to ask questions on those before we move on to the next ones.
I see no hands, Chair.
Okay, then Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours again. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the investigation reports before you today. The investigations include a collision, improper roadway work protection events, and improper door operations. Investigation Whiskey 0295 relates to a collision at Twin Brook Station on December 9th, 2023 that resulted in the equipment operator being thrown through the windshield of a roadway maintenance machine. The tie crane collided with the tunnel portal entrance between Twin Brook and North Bethesda. The equipment operator was thrown from their seat through the windshield onto the roadway. Video shows that the boom was not secured as the tie crane entered Twin Brook Station, and the boom struck the wall above the tracks at the tunnel portal. This occurred in a weekend shutdown work area. The equipment operator did not report the collision or that they were ejected from the vehicle. They reported that they were unable to move the unit and needed a road mechanic. After a track and structure supervisor responded to the location, the collision was reported and an emergency response was requested. The equipment operator was taken to the hospital. This unit does not have a seatbelt for the operator. As a result of this investigation, Metro Rail sent a reminder to wear seatbelts when available, reviewed its roadway maintenance machines to identify those that do not have seatbelts, updated maintenance instructions to inspect seatbelts during scheduled maintenance, and is in the process of retrofitting its RMMs that do not have seatbelts to install appropriate restraint systems. Thank you, Chair Hart. That completes this report.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley on this report?
I've got one real quick question on the roadway maintenance machine itself.
Yes, please, Commissioner Rouse.
Yeah, looking at the report, the seatbelt's one thing, but the windshield as well. Was there any investigation as to how that was attached and whether that was appropriate for the job functions that this piece of equipment performs? Because I presume it's, obviously it wasn't expecting to have somebody ejected from the inside. But it's also supposed to protect the operator from obstacles on the outside. And that, just curious in the holistic look at RMMs in themselves. Obviously, seatbelts is a big addition that they're going to need to take a look at. But what about how these pieces of equipment are spec'd for the duties that they're being performed, or the job functions that they need them for? Are they just buying off the shelf, or are these specially procured?
Understood. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I'll have to follow up with you on that and really dive in to see. I mean, all these units go through a safety certification and are inspected by, car engineering and the maintenance, mechanics and things like that. So, but I do not know if they took a real deep look at the window itself. It looks like their focus, as you can tell in the report, was the seatbelts.
Okay, thank you. I mean, yeah, looking at it, it's hard to tell from just a picture of it what type of safety class it was, or if it was, even an afterthought as to whether it was appropriate for the job.
Understood.
Just making sure that Ms. Silbach and Chair Hart both recognize, we just got a message from Commissioner Lobby that his area has experienced a power failure and it's taken him off the air for right now. Hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us soon.
Thank you. We still maintain a quorum. So.
Okay,
no
thank you for that
concern.
heads up. Are there any further questions for Mr. Quigley from any of the commissioners?
I see no other hands.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. In that case, Ms. Key-Rose, would you please present the next reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigations Whiskey 0296 through Whiskey 0299 relate to improper roadway worker protection events that occurred last year. As was discussed at the last meeting, the WMSC expects to require extensive improvements to Metrorail's roadway worker protection program implementation through the RWP audit. Metrorail is currently reviewing the draft report, and we will consider Metrorail's comments, if there are any, prior to issuing a final report. The events before you today occurred in January, February, June, and September 2023. As a result of these investigations, Metrorail conducted a safety stand-down to address advanced mobile flagging safety events, issued a safety bulletin, implemented other actions to mitigate these near misses, and distributed information about the importance of effective communication. Metrorail is also in the process of implementing corrective action plans to address WMSC findings related to fatigue risk management, Metrorail's acceptance of noncompliance with written safety rules and procedures, and fitness for duty checks. The WMSC evaluated Metrorail's processes and procedures related to exclusive track occupancy using local signal control as part of the RWP audit that will be issued in coming months, and has communicated areas of concern to Metrorail during the audit process. Investigation Whiskey 0296, a training.
Just a minute, sorry to interrupt, but I want to give the commissioners a chance to ask questions about each event rather than wait till the end. Any questions regarding Whiskey 0296 from Ms. Key-Rose?
I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Key-Rose, sorry for the interruption. Please continue with Whiskey 0297.
I'm going to start. I had just had like an introduction. So I have 0296, a summary. Training instructor operating an out-of-service train did not know that there were workers on the roadway ahead. An advanced mobile flagger on the platform did not report this train movement as an emergency as required. And I can pause for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key-Rose? Okay, please proceed.
In Investigation Whiskey 0297, a train operator operated above the permitted speed past a work crew after dropping off a separate work crew onto the roadway. The train operator mistakenly believed the advanced mobile flagger briefing at the platform to be related to the work crew they were dropping off. Regardless, the train operator operated at up to 47 miles per hour past a work crew, which exceeds the required safe speed. And I can pause again.
What is the required safe speed?
At the time, it was 15. 15 when you pass them. And after you pass the work crew, you're supposed to continue at half the regulated. So if the regulated was 50, then they would continue 25 to the next station.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions for Ms. Quiros from Whiskey 20297?
I see no hands.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. Okay, Ms. Quiros, please proceed.
Investigation Whiskey 0298 relates to a train improperly routed into an occupied section of track by automatic train control maintenance personnel. The local control panel operator improperly retook control of the panel when a rail supervisor was on the roadway with foul time protection from the rail traffic controller. This risked a collision with the rail supervisor.
Okay, any questions from any of the commissioners regarding Whiskey 298?
No
Okay.
raised hands.
Thank you. Seeing none. Whiskey 299, Ms. Quiros?
Yes, finally, investigation Whiskey 0299 relates to a communications technician who moved outside of their assigned working limits without permission or protection. The technician placed a shunt on an adjacent track near Roslyn Station where the orange and blue lines split. The rail traffic controller identified this safety event.
Thank you, Ms. Quiros. Any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Quiros?
No hands for this one either.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Silva. Okay, moving on. Mr. Quigley, would you please present the next reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. These investigation reports, Whiskey 0300 through Whiskey 0303, relate to individual improper door operation events that occurred in March, July, and August of last year. 3 of these relate to an operator incorrectly commanding doors to open on the non-platform side of the train. The 4th investigation relates to an operator improperly stopping a train short of the required stopping location for all trains, then opening the doors without all the doors on the platform. Metrorail is in the process of implementing automatic door operations across the system. Currently, automatic door open functions are being utilized on the red line. Metrorail is in the process of training and certifying operators on other lines. When this system works, it automatically opens the train's doors on the correct side of the train when the train is properly berthed. Metrorail is also in the process of implementing a corrective action plan addressing its culture of non-compliance with procedures and manuals. Metrorail is also in the process of properly certifying train operators and developing systematic mitigations to assure future compliance with its safety requirements due to the WMSC's February train operator certification order. Thank you. That completes today's investigation report.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I have a question that's not real directly for Mr. Quigley here, but as it relates to rolling out AT, automatic door operation, I got the right letters.
Please proceed, Mr. Rouse, Commissioner Rouse.
How does this, has this basically been put on hold while Bovada takes a look at its recertification of its engineers and or its operators in terms of who's certified and meets the requirements? Or is that still going on in the background? How's that being managed between those?
Samara Singha, do you want to take that question, or do you want to ask someone else to respond to it?
I would like to ask Commissioner Rouse to repeat his question, because I'm assuming that you asked a certain thing, but I don't want to answer this assumption.
Yeah, is it, automatic train door operation here, as we've seen in these incidents, especially, that hopefully would have been prevented from the human error with the automatic operation, but that means the operator has to be trained on how to use them and it has to be rolled out to those lines. So with the ongoing effort as it relates to operators certification in general and making sure they have what they need, has that effort been put on hold, or is that still ongoing? How are those two efforts being managed?
So first, I'll answer yes to both of your assumptions, whether this event could have been prevented by automatic door operations, and also whether there is training that is required for individuals to understand how to use it. And I will turn it over to Paul Smith to provide the remainder of the answer.
Yeah, so the two efforts are ongoing concurrently, Commissioner Rouse. So they're completing the train operator certifications as well as the ADO operator certification for ADO. So Currently, they're conducting the ADO operator certification runs on the rest of the lines. We've already activated, or they've already activated ADO on the red line. They indicated this week that they've completed that 95% threshold, as we indicated earlier, for the training of operators on automatic door operations on the rest of the system. So hopefully that answers that part of your question.
It does. Thank you. I was just curious how those two are being managed since there's overlap there.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions, Chair Hart.
Yes.
And I have to apologize. I'm in Falls Church and we're having a power failure, so I got thrown out of the meeting, and I'm on my phone here. But I had a couple of questions. First of all, in the briefing material, there was reference to Metro Rail planning to implement a point and call practice for train operators, and I was wondering if Mr. Quigley could give us a little bit more information on exactly what that is and how it might be implemented on Washington Metro.
Sure. So yeah, we've heard Metro talk about the point of call for a few years now. Still waiting to see some more documents and confirmation of it. But it's used in other systems. I believe San Diego. I know small light rail or trolley system that San Diego has utilizes point and call, but basically the cab or the train operator is pointing to the oncoming signal and calling out what that signal means, and basically that's it. So I mean, you could do that for switch points if you wanted to. You could do it for any different type of signaling system, but basically it just keeps the operator in tune with the wayside equipment and signaling system and pointing and calling out what they say. So I think some agencies, they usually call it over the radio, and then if they have a brakeman or conductor or whatever other terms they have in other agencies, they would also repeat that. But for Metro, it would just be the operator itself.
Point and call is in the rail industry is something that's largely credited to work in Japan, where it's a very formal method for Japanese train operators and others to acknowledge signals, signage, and other aspects of their environment by pointing and making a call when they see that signal. It's something that's been in use as a result of the Japanese lead on the New York City transit subway system for many years for the conductors, the conductor being a second crew member who rides in the middle of the consist to point at the conductor's indication board before opening doors to ensure that the train is properly platformed and that the doors that the conductor is about to open are the corresponding doors to the side of the platform. And not to belabor it, but this is also a best practice that is used on the flight deck between aviation crew members to exchange information. It's very, very common for airline procedures to require. I want to stress that this is a very formal thing. It's not something that crew members just do. But for instance, when receiving a new altitude assignment, it's very common for crew members to be required to dial that assignment into the autopilot, point to it, and keep the finger up until the other pilot also acknowledges it with a finger, so that there is a cross check that's nonverbal. But this is something that is a very formal part of some safe operations in practice. And if Metro wishes to roll this out, that it would be certainly something we would look forward to paying attention to and looking for them to incorporate formally into their procedures if they wish to do it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to hear that they've considered this, because the point and call I've seen it in action on the Shinkansen in Japan. Certainly the Shinkansen has a stellar safety record. And I wasn't aware that it was used so much in aviation as part of, I assume, crew resource management. But it's interesting to see a train operator who is essentially talking to himself all by himself in an operating cab and going through this formal process. And until you've seen it, it sounds a little bit silly, but until you've seen it, you just are always impressed by how effective it is. And I'm very happy to see them do that. Hopefully, if they do roll it out, they can get their operators on board to actually use it, because it is a very effective tool for ensuring safe operation and making sure that you systematically look at all the issues.
And that's truly a key point. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you, but that's truly a key point to make sure that it's universally applied. It's not just an option that some have. Another place you can see it is if you go stand in the middle of the platform on any, well, almost any New York City, not the single operator trains, but the trains that are crewed by 2 crew members in New York City Transit and the subway system. If you stand in the middle of the platform at the conductor's position of the train consist, you will see a point and acknowledgement of the conductor's indication board before doors are opened, and it happens thousands of times a day.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of applications. Also in Japan, I've seen them applied every time one of the employees crosses the tracks. He looks left and points left, looks right and points right to make sure that there's no trains coming, and then carefully crosses the track. So there's a lot of applications for it, and I think that's exciting that the Metro would take that on. I had another question. I think we're still talking about the West Hyattsville station, Whiskey 0300. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. My question has on one of the findings about Metro Rail is ignoring its fatigue management policy. And I note that this individual was on an overtime assignment. How was their policy violated in this case?
That is so the Metro itself has a policy, fatigue policy, but because of the union, I guess our train operators technically don't have a fatigue policy. Metro has one, but they can't enforce it because it's a unionized position where, with Local 2 and ARTRA. So they had just worked more hours than what Metro's normal policy is. They weren't in violation. They had, enough hours of sleep, or, enough rest between shifts, but they just had worked a large amount of hours in that week and leading up to the event. So not technically a violation of the train operators' hours, just Metro's policy that they tried to enforce, but they really can't with the Local 2 unions. That makes sense. It probably doesn't, but
it makes some sense. It seems that there's a gap between the Metro policy and their labor agreement that probably needs to be filled at some point.
Yes.
I think that's perhaps an accurate way of saying it, Commissioner Lobby. It's not that a policy can't be enforced simply because the workforce is unionized. It will take a greater degree of work between labor and management to arrive at a time when a policy can be enforced.
All right, thank you for that. I had one more short question.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
The operator had problems with his radio and had to call on a phone, and then had to report that the improper door operation over a handheld radio. So we've got a phone and 2 radios involved in here. Where did the handheld radio come from, and was there actually a problem with the operating cab radio that he couldn't report this issue?
Correct. So all train operators carry handheld radios as backup. So they first utilize the cab radio, and then if that fails, they have their handheld. And then, like you mentioned, this operator uses their phone. So I believe it looked like the cab radio had checked out, or there wasn't a maximo or anything on that. So don't know if it was just a location issue or not individual problem, but no major concerns with the operator cab Radio.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Laube. Are there any more questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley? And also thank you, Vice Chair Laube and Dr. Meyer for letting us know, for giving us a bigger picture regarding the point and call procedure and how successful it has been in other contexts, and kudos to Metro for looking into this procedure and employing it.
I see no other hands raised, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now that we're done with the reports, is there a motion to adopt the investigation reports that have just been presented? That's Whiskey 0295 through Whiskey 0304. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. Is there a second to the motion?
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrar Dyke. There's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Great.
Nay.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, I believe I heard Commissioner Lobby. Of course, we can't see his hand, but I'm sure that we heard him in support.
Yes, that's a yay from Commissioner Lobby.
Thank you. Then the vote is unanimous to adopt the investigation reports as presented.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lobby, please rest assured that your being thrown out was not anything personal.
Thank you for that.
Today, we are considering the next item on the agenda is the program standard review. We're considering the annual program standard review and update. This is the governing document that sets out requirements and deadlines for Metro Rail and expectations from the WMSC. In accordance with our responsibilities under the WMSC Compact, the process is set out in our program standard and federal regulations. We update the program standard at least once a year as part of our continuous improvement process. The draft program standard, Metro Rail's comments on the draft, and associated documentation were all provided to each of the commissioners for review ahead of this meeting. The updates before us today, including staff recommendations based on our experience as Metro Rail safety regulator and appropriate adjustments based on feedback that Metro Rail provided as part of our regular review and comment process. So this is the conclusion of a months-long process. Dr. Meyer, do you have any comments to add regarding this process?
Just to say that the WMSC Compact is the document that lays out our authority and responsibilities, and it's the program standard that helps us put those into practice. As part of our continuous improvement process, we consider program standard improvements throughout the year as we conduct our work. The program standard comes to the commissioners for review at least once each calendar year, and our review process always includes internal meetings as well as consultation with Metro Rail personnel. In accordance with this process, after the WMSC has produced a final draft of the revision, we formally transmitted the draft to WMATA for its review and provided time for Metro Rail to provide feedback to us. And Metro Rail provided written feedback on the draft in April. We carefully considered and reviewed that feedback. We reviewed it in light of our role as the principal safety oversight authority, in light of our compact and against relevant regulations, and we did incorporate changes as appropriate. Compared to prior revisions, the proposed changes this year are the fewest that the WMSC has made. We are recommending that this revision take effect on July 1st of 2024. The updates this year include technical corrections and refinements to the existing program standard, as well as changes to reflect new Metro Rail titles and department names. So I don't have anything further to add other than to urge the commissioners to adopt this revision of the program standard.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer, and that's no surprise that the number of changes has decreased. I imagine as we're learning to dance together, we're in a better place on the learning curve, so I anticipate that will continue. It shows that we're learning how to work together more efficiently and effectively. So thank you for that, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you. In that case, is there, excuse me, a motion to adopt resolution R 2024-05, adopting Program Standard Revision 7. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Higgins, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Bob, thank you for that. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is again unanimous. So the motion to adopt the resolution and to adopt revision 7 to the program standard passes.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. The next item on our agenda is our annual reports. We continued our important oversight work in 2023 to help Metro Rail achieve substantial safety improvements through ongoing collaboration, safety audits, inspections, safety certification oversight, safety event investigations, and other work. Our ongoing robust safety oversight helped ensure that Metro Rail properly completed its safety certification process to open Potomac Yard Station and to begin automatic door operation on the Red Line. We continued our work in 2023 on the 7000 series rail cars. This included work as a party to the NTSB-led derailment investigation. The NTSB completed its report in 2023 and published it in January of 2024. Throughout 2023, the WMSC continued to ensure that Metro Rail's return to service plan revisions assured the safety of riders and workers and were data-driven. Ongoing communication and cooperation between the WMSC and Metro Rail led to timely remediation of safety concerns throughout the year. In 2023, the WMSC issued 3 audit reports and conducted work on 4 additional safety audits to be issued in 2024. These audits identify positive practices and opportunities for safety improvement that the WMSC requires Metro Rail to address to ensure that Metro Rail is following its safety management system commitments specified in the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. 2023, the WMSC approved for closure 55 corrective action plans designed to address safety concerns identified during WMSC oversight activities. Each Metro Rail actionable item completed during implementation of a CAP improves the system's safety. WMSC continues to monitor the effectiveness of these safety mitigations even after a CAP is closed. I would like to thank the Mayor of Washington, D.C., the governors of Maryland and Virginia, the D.C. Council, the Maryland and Virginia General Assemblies, Congress, and the officials in numerous local and federal agencies, including the Federal Transit Administration, who continue to be critical partners in this oversight and continuous safety improvement effort. These reports provide snapshots of Metro Rail safety in 2023, the work toward Metro Rail's continuous improvement of its safety, and our future activities. Dr. Meyer, do you have anything to add regarding the 2 annual reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. These reports highlight some of the extensive oversight work that we conducted in calendar year 2023. The 2 reports are essentially an annual reporting of our own WMSC operations and a report focused on the safety of the WMATA rail system in 2023. These reports are in addition to our annual data reporting to the FTA through their state safety oversight reporting tool. We submitted that technical data to the FTA as required ahead of a March 15th deadline. Upon adoption, both the WMSC operations report and the report on the safety of the WMATA rail system will be sent, as required by law, to leaders in Virginia, Maryland, DC, and the federal government. And they will also be provided to WMATA leadership, including its board, and of course, they'll be available on our public website. Our safety oversight work in 2023 continued to identify areas of progress, and it also identified Metro Rail safety issues that WMATA is required to correct. This is leading to meaningful safety benefits for riders, workers, and others. For example, our work in 2023 included overseeing Metro Rail's return to service plan for the 7000 series rail cars, continuing our work as a party to the NTSB derailment investigation, identifying Metrorail's noncompliance with its safety requirements for train operator training in early 2023 and train operator certification later in 2023. Effective safety audits, including automatic train control and signals, and beginning work on audits such as roadway worker protection. Regular inspections and safety certification oversight, guiding Metrorail to use systems engineering principles and practices for the implementation of its projects, and frequent and regular communication with personnel at all levels of the Metrorail organization. We appreciate the financial support of Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia, as well as the FTA, and I'm proud of our performance against budget and our ongoing clean financial audits. We are committed to the safety of every Metrorail rider, employee, and contractor, as well as anyone else who comes in contact with the system. Thank you, Commissioners, for entrusting our team with such important safety oversight responsibilities.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer, for all the work that you do to accept that delegation of that responsibility. Are there any questions for Dr. Meyer from any of the commissioners?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Is there a motion to approve and publish the annual safety report and the annual report of operations?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Laube. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. That was from whom?
Commissioner Dyke.
Commissioner Frydyk, thank you. And thank you for the motion and second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Okay, so again, our vote is 6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes to approve and publish the 2 annual reports for 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we're going to move to an executive session. We're going to adjourn this meeting and have an executive session. Before we do that, is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address today?
Chair Hart, I have one quick comment.
Yes, please, Commissioner Rao.
We talk a lot about bringing up issues that are positive, right, in terms of, especially for what Vermont is doing, so we're moving in the right direction. We don't always want to focus on the negative. I did want to point out and say thank you to the WMSC staff for the changes that they made to the reports that we have for accidents. I know they've taken into consideration some of the comments we've had in the previous meetings, and I thought the improvements and changes were a step in the right direction. I really appreciate that initiative, and may not be there, there may be some tweaks. Everybody has different perspectives, and I'm sure, but I do appreciate it, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Dr. Meyer, do you have any, or Ms. Samara Singh, do you have any comments regarding that?
No particular comments. The changes referred to primarily are in our what we call internally the cover sheets, the material that is, I guess it's not appended, it's prepended to the reports that Metrorail prepares, and we made some changes to the verbiage in those reports and received some suggestions from the commissioners that we took into consideration in making those changes. So we appreciate that perhaps we've hit the mark or at least come close.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Rouse, for raising the point. Is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address today before we move to executive session? Hearing none, that completes the public portion of our meeting for today. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. We expect to hold our next public meeting on August the 6th, 2024. I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for all of their hard work to continuously improve the safety of Metrorail, and I would like to thank them for their presentations for this meeting. I'd also like to thank the commissioners for being so engaged in the process in general and in this meeting in particular. And finally, we would like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting. We appreciate your joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. It occurs to me in relation to comments that we've had previously in this meeting, I would also like to thank WMSC for their continued working with us on a common goal of continuously improving safety. Thank you for that. The commissioners do have some further issues to address in executive session. Our bylaws permit closing a portion of this meeting to the public for specific purposes as specified in federal law. Today, this is business that relates to internal personnel matters, as 5 USC section 552B(f) requires. I request that the council certify that the meeting may be closed to the public and state that the applicable exempting provision of the Sunshine Act. Ms. Silbaugh?
Yes, Chair Hart, this portion of the meeting may be closed as specified in 5 USC 552B subpart C2. The subpart C are the exceptions to the open meeting rules, and an exception is for issues that relate solely to the internal personnel rules and practices of the agency, and that is the purpose of this closed session.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. So pursuant to 5 USC 552B(d), a majority of the members are required to vote to enter into executive session. So I would like to move that we go into executive session for the reasons stated by Ms. Silbaugh, and that we then adjourn following that executive session. We will publicly reconfirm the topic discussed in the executive session at our next public meeting. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
I think that I heard all yays. Speak up if anyone off camera was a nay, so that, again, we have a unanimous vote that we may move into executive session.
And Chair Hart, if I could ask, as you're closing this meeting to transition to executive session, if you could be clear as to whether you're asking commissioners to join that session immediately, or if there'll be any break between now and the executive session starting.
Unless anybody objects, I would rather go without a break as soon as people can sign into the new session. Any objections to that process? Anybody who has to wait, who can't do it right now? Okay, thank you. Then commissioners, please leave this meeting and join the executive session. Members of the public, we appreciate your joining us today, and we look forward again to seeing you next time. Thank you. The meeting is not adjourned yet, but it will be when we're done. So that's when I'll make sure that it's clear that we've adjourned the meeting. Thank you, everyone. See the commissioners in executive session.